Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. With another Modern Warfare game potentially on the horizon, big discussions over these last few days as to the mechanics that the pro players would like to see in that game. Scump and FormaL making it very clear they do not like slide cancelling at all as it has been iterated the last few years. They want to go back to a more traditional system. Whether that could possibly arrive in the future remains to be seen. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Firstly, just wanted to mention this from Pac-Man, former pro player, of course, part of their whatever, the Codcast, right? It was called with Nameless and Pac-Man. It was actually really good for a time. Unfortunately, that disappeared, but maybe kind of got overtaken by the flank to a degree. But yeah, Pac-Man announces yesterday he's going to be working on alongside aBeZy with the X-Defined project. So I did think that was really cool, actually, getting some of these, former COD pros on board to give their perspective. This is something that I guess we wished would be the case, and maybe, well, could potentially be the case. We'll talk about with slide cancelling here in a few minutes' time about, what Call of Duty decide to do. This X-Defined project with Ubisoft, like aBeZy has been working on it behind the scenes, and Pac-Man's kind of joining the party as well. As aBeZy says, Pac-Man has always had a great mind when it comes to FPS games. When I joined Ubisoft, I knew getting him to be involved would pay dividends for X-Defined, looking to improve, bringing on more professionals with different perspectives helps accomplish that. So, cool stuff, I thought. Good to see former Call of Duty pros that kind of get positions like this in the industry, right? Because, it can be difficult for some former pros if they, kind of retired earlier than they would have liked to, didn't quite have the success they would have liked to, didn't maybe go to college, right, to get a degree, this type of issues. Like, what do they find themselves doing after the fact if they don't necessarily want to go down the content route? And, cool to see them getting roles like this. But Clayster says in the reply, because maybe he's thinking similar things, he's of course had plenty of success in the Call of Duty world, more than Pac-Man, but as he says, well, maybe I'll hit you up here in a couple of weeks, because things are looking pretty tough. So Clay making it rather clear, he's still not got a team on the table, not got a team lined up. Makes sense, right? It's going to be tough for him to find an opportunity, but yeah, maybe him working alongside this X-Defined project. But that's pretty cool, right? Because these kind of OG players, I'm sure they have great perspectives on how they want the game design to be, how they want the game to play, how they want the movement to be, the map design and all this type of stuff, like what's going to play best for competitive. I'm sure these guys have fantastic ideas to actually make a great competitive game. And of course, it would be great if one or more of these guys can actually at some point get involved or talk to the developers in the more early stage game. Because sometimes in Call of Duty, they kind of flow the players out there to play the game in the early alpha stage, but by that point, the game design has basically been set, right? The movement is set, the maps have already pretty much been designed, like maybe they can tweak a few things, but still, the pros don't really get all that much input, whereas on this stage of the game that X-Defiant's working on, I guess, these guys are very much in the mix of deciding some of the core gameplay elements. So, well, even as Attach says, bring exosuits back, right? So who wants a game with exosuits? Like, I don't know, it could be a cool project that these guys, of course, are working on behind the scenes right now. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Scump's perspective, actually, on the movement in Call of Duty and really other games the last few years. This was pretty cool. Not actually sure who made this. I saw Hex tweeted out, then Scump tweeted out, but pretty cool cartoon graphic here of the Optic guys. But yeah, Scump a few days ago, he was, of course, doing the Hot Ones challenge, and well, Hitch was asking him, what do you think is kind of the issue with these arena shooters over the last few years that's kept them back from competing really with the viewership the Battle Royale is bringing, and just in the game in general, why has maybe some of the games gone downhill the last few titles? Now, Scump says, first of all, the maps are absolutely key. That's my opinion, to be honest. If the maps are good, then from a competitive perspective, that can make up for like pretty much all the shortfalls of the game if the maps are absolutely fantastic. Doesn't always, but to be honest, looking back at Cold War, I think it was a pretty solid competitive game, but the maps certainly made it to me. If the maps weren't great, the game would have been, well, maybe more boring than it was. I think for competitive to watch, it was pretty boring, even though it was a pretty competitive title, to be honest, with a quite significant skill gap, as we saw with what FaZe were able to do that season. But last year's title also had slide cancelling in, as we've had for many years at this point in Call of Duty. Slide cancelling, I guess, really came in around the Black Ops 4 time, because I think in Black Ops 3, like, sliding was very good, but you couldn't really slide straight into a gunfight. Like, your pull-up time from the slide into actually shooting was rather long, and in Infinite Warfare, I think it wasn't particularly common as well to do a slide cancel or anything. So I think it was generally from Black Ops 4, really, where slide cancelling started to become a viable option, and they're just flying around corners and stuff. And since then, from Modern Warfare and onwards, it's been pretty much a mainstay of Call of Duty. And well, from the professional level, it's such an important part of their kind of movement mechanic arsenal, they have to use it every single life, many times a life. And Scump isn't happy about this at all. He reckons that towards the later end of his career, especially as an SMG player, is very taxing on his hands, right? And says that, like, he's 27, competed for many years. Nowadays, it's very different to what it was back in the day, right, when slide cancelling was not a mechanic. And also saying that he doesn't like the gimmicks, but he also straight up hates slide cancelling and wish it was gone. And FormaL echoes these opinions.
Alright. Alright, we've seen the arena shooter titles. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Arena shooter titles. Once we're Titans. We're talking Halo, Call of Duty, Gears of War, but now they're always struggling to compete with the viewership that Battle Royale brings. As a competitive player,
oh my God! Dude, that should be illegal.
As a competitive player, what advice would you give Activision 343, Epic, and to make the arena shooters once again compete and parallel with Battle Royale titles?
Better maps, hands down. I think right now, the mechanics and gunplay are all right. I hate slide canceling personally.
You're talking about in Halo and Call of Duty. You hate the advanced movement?
I don't hate it. I just think it's gimmicky. But it also works. So I don't really know where to put it.
Yeah.
I just don't like it because I'm getting older and it's so much stress on your hands.
Yeah.
So like, after 10 hours, like it's hard on your hands. Back then it wasn't that bad because there wasn't as many actions per minute. Now it's like, you're doing like 10 to 30 actions per minute of life. Maybe even, you could do 100 actions per minute of life. Like maybe, if you're like frying.
You're just like camera everyone. I don't really like tip those type of kills. I just think that's like a broken game mechanic. You know what I'm saying? If you slide cancel someone hard enough and they can't even see you by the time they're dead, that's not really like skillful. That's more of the game being broken. You know what I'm saying? Hope that makes sense.
So this I thought was an interesting take here from Happy, right? I believe Happy, OP Suda, Op Suda was very briefly part of the subliners roster right at the start of Modern Warfare. You guys might remember that one. But this is kind of his hot take from a couple of days ago. Slide cancel CODs are trash, no skill gap at all. So Scump doesn't like the slide cancelling at all. I think, kind of FormaL's perspective was you can slide around the corner and camera the guy before he can even see you, which, does create some complications, to be honest, with the fact that, the tick rate of the service and all these issues mean that slide cancelling can be somewhat dodgy. Personally, I think it adds an element of a skill gap. It's an interesting one to me because I really liked the jetpack games, the likes of Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, because you could outplay people with the movement. And if you remove all of the movement mechanics, like all of the jetpacks, and you remove the slide cancel, then you get a game like World War II where you really can't outplay anyone with movement apart from your positioning. There were a few players like Jerd, for example, that could throw some mean shoulders, but throwing a shoulder was probably the biggest movement thing you could do in World War II apart from the punch dive. But since then, with the slide cancel coming into play, you can still outplay people with movement, even though there isn't actual jetpacks in the game. So I like that element of it. Of course, the whole tactical sprint into a slide cancel is somewhat cheesy, and the problem is that it's such a mainstay mechanic of competitive play and professional play that it has to be used all the time, as I say, every single life. Scump saying it's really draining on your hands as a player, and also is it a bailout for certain players? But there's no doubt that I think there is some skill gap in it, in that we've talked about the whole idea of the auto tactical sprint, right? The fact that some players, maybe the more the old school veteran players, older SMGs, wanted to have that in the game because it maybe helps them to slide cancel easier, whereas the cracked out young guys who could just, double tap sprint and then go into it, they have slightly greater skill in being able to do that. But I believe Crimsix made the point last year, sometime during Cold War, that the Atlanta FaZe team were effectively slide cancel merchants. Without the slide cancel, these guys would be nowhere near as good. And he's talking about right here what Trek could have done in Cold War, saying swap the slide to fire time with the sprint to fire time. So basically saying sliding into firing should be slow. This is what they did back in Black Ops 3, I believe. If you were sliding and got into a gunfight, it took you quite a time to bring your gun up. Whereas, sprint to firing is almost the other way around now, where it makes more sense to slide into a gunfight than it does to sprint into a gunfight. If those were the other way around, maybe the game would play very different indeed. And Crim did say that, look, the FaZe guys without slide cancelling, they would be nowhere near as good. So that's the thing. The last few titles, maybe you favoured the FaZe guys in terms of the mechanics of the game, and you do have to wonder if things changed around again, whether things would go back to, well, not necessarily how they were, but you guys remember when it went from the jetpack era back to boots on the ground in World War II, and definitely some of the old school boots on the ground players definitely got better again. JCat was certainly better, I think, individually, even though, statistically, and at least in terms of championships won and world championships won, he did great during the jetpack era. aBeZy, for example, after being atrocious during Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare, he comes back to World War II and wins the world championship, right? So there is that thing where the movement mechanics change, it does favour some players over others, and maybe the last few years have just favoured FaZe very heavily, right, in terms of how they like to play the game with the slide cancel. But, Scump's frustrated about it, it, maybe for multiple reasons. And aBeZy says this in 2020, I guess, when the theory was coming in that they might be switching up the slide cancelling in Modern Warfare. I'm about to suck, he says. So, you know, maybe it didn't end up happening, right? And they kind of changed things around once again. And as aBeZy echoes right here, we are discussing slide cancellers. No one is going to stop us, in reply to Simp as it was at the time. So that's the thing. If the slide cancel was changed, should it be changed? Should it be gone? Of course, look, Modern Warfare is coming up, Modern Warfare 2, whatever, another Infinity Ward game. You would imagine they're just going to straight up copy and paste. After that, though, it goes to a Treyarch title. Their last few games, they've also had the slide in there. Like, I honestly think the slide is going to stay until the maybe jetpacks come back, right? The slide is always going to be there. I think it's a mechanic. I doubt it's going to go back to kind of, you know, punching the air and dolphin diving onto the ground like it was in World War II and back in the Black Ops 2 days and stuff like this. I think sliding is going to be there, but it's a question as to, with sliding still there, can you maybe change things in terms of the slide to fire time and stuff that actually makes that slide cancelling as an option less viable for its utility in gunfights? Because I would argue that it makes more sense. Like, you know, sliding back in Call of Duty Ghost was only used to try and get to a piece of cover. Like, if you were sprinting and someone was shooting at you, you could slide to the cover, just get behind there in time. You didn't have too much power on it. And, you know, that was kind of at the optimal slide, you could argue, that it would use for movement and to get away and to slide to cover and this type of stuff, as opposed to being used in every single gunfight you ever get into. So I do think there's a good question about that from Scump and FormaL as to whether it should be gone. Of course, that Treyarch's game, I guess, will be coming after Modern Warfare 2 or whatever it's called, so maybe Treyarch will change their mind there. But I think even potentially it's going to be 2 years of Modern Warfare 2, and then the Treyarch game will come out in, what, 2023, I guess, 2024? So yeah, maybe it's a long time away. Few words on Slasher, because I thought this stuff was pretty funny. Parasite says, you know, this guy really said, are you not entertained? Because this is new aBeZy. Like, after he won the event, this is pretty stone cold, to be honest. There were some good pictures, of course, for the event. You know, people really forgot, bro. So Slasher's been on fire on the timeline these last few days. Who can blame him, to be perfectly honest, with the success he's just had? This also I thought was pretty interesting. Spart says, you know, how are you guys Twitter? Because earlier today we looked at the fact that the Volk is more than likely completely gone. And again, Chino isn't particularly happy about it, but well, mainly due to the ranked play system that's absolutely broken. What's wrong with it? Haven't been in a while. I'll just say you need me, right? So Slasher and Chino, good relationship going on there. But this also has some pretty interesting stats I thought from JP Krez. Which pros are throwing their stuns the most in the hard points? Top 5 tacks thrown per death back at Major 2. So, well, as Litigo says, Tactician, I've been saying it, facts, you've been saying it, stats don't lie. So look at these stats, actually. So these, well, per deaths, of course, a guy like Slasher played way more matches, I guess, this event, way more maps. Therefore, he had way more deaths in the hard points. And, you know, they played so many maps, right, this tourney, because they played, you know, so many game 5s, right, so they had to play 2 hard points in all of those series. But yeah, Slasher died 238 times and threw 172 stuns. That's pretty impressive. Methods, though, topping the list, 99 or 81 for 99. Gizmo right behind him, then Cellium, then Envoy actually right here, I guess the only SMG player making it onto this list. This doesn't necessarily show how impactful those stuns were, right? You could be throwing stuns but not hitting anyone, I suppose. But, you know, still, I thought these stats were pretty interesting, just showing who's maybe making the most out of it. Well, every life you get a stun, so to throw one in Method's case, 82% of lives, is pretty impressive. And just to finish out with this from the COD, like, it's your final map to get in the top 250 of ranked play. Which map are you picking? Like, of course, you got many options. RC's Records Bacage, but, you know, to be fair, the FaZe guys are pretty good about that one. But, you know, we were kind of hoping for a while that Bacage might be gone from the map sets if another map is viable, but apparently there's no new maps coming in. So we had Casablanca, right? We had the Gondola one or whatever, but neither of them seem to be viable. This would be the perfect time for Cellium to drop some new maps, so the pros have some time to try them out, and actually we'll give them a go for Major 3, but that seems unlikely at the present time, unfortunately. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit a like button and tell us the YouTube gods it's a good video, and as like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.